A good Erev Shabbos to my beloved Boca Jewish Center community and family. I do hope that this message finds you and your loved ones healthy and safe and well, and I know you join me in heartfelt tefillah on behalf of those in Jewish communities around the world who are in desperate need of a refuah shalema, a quick and speedy recovery. May we all experience Yeshua's Hashem, keheref ayin. There's a well-known story about a fellow by the name of Dave Brenner who came from a place called Claremont, Florida. He grew up with very little Jewish education. And so after his freshman year in college, he decided with a couple of friends he's going to take a bike ride around the world. And while he was on this trip, for reasons that were still at this point unknown to him, his route was changed. And he found himself that he was now on a recourse where he was now going to travel to Israel. He'd never been to Israel before. And as he was pedaling through Haifa and he was pedaling through Tveria, he found himself ultimately in Jerusalem. And he found himself in the old city at the wall, found himself at the Kotel HaMa'aravi, the Kotel that is right behind me. And he was taken by the stones, and he was taken by the energy, and he was very, very uplifted, not knowing really what a yeshiva was, and any bit of what serious yeshiva education was. He was inquisitive, and he was curious, and he found a yeshiva that was interested in him, and he and them, and he decided to take a couple classes. And lo and behold, after he took a couple of classes, he became more and more interested, and suffice it to say, his interest was such that he never continued the rest of his bike ride. He spent 5 weeks in the yeshiva and he was learning Mishnah and philosophy and his heritage and Masorah and the 10 Commandments and all of the unbelievable foundations and the principles for which he had never learned before. He was fascinated, he was uplifted, and he was inspired. And after his 5-week stint in the yeshiva in the old city, he decided that he has to go back, back to his family in Claremont, Florida. And when he came back, he was met by tremendous resistance. His family was wondering why all of a sudden now he's keeping kosher. What's this whole idea of Shabbos? Why all the lifestyle changes and all the choices that you've made? That's not for you. That's not who you are. That's not from where you come. And so he was tortured and tormented. It was so difficult for him. He felt so committed and so connected and so inspired. And now, after his return back home, he felt that it was so difficult to keep the enthusiasm, the vigor, the excitement alive. And so he found himself on one Friday night. He was, overcome by the temptation. Maybe they're right. Maybe it's so difficult. Maybe this Shabbos thing, maybe this Judaism thing, it's really not for me. I'm going to rely on a sign from heaven. If there will be a heavenly sign, a divine inspired, symbol of some sort, then I'll know that it's meant for me and it's meant to be. So he sat down in his couch in his living room, and he was hoping for some type of divine epiphany. He flipped on the television. He succumbed to his Yetzer Hara. And he was watching the David Letterman show. He never watched the David Letterman show, hadn't watched it in a long time. And as he was watching the show, the very first guest on that particular evening was a famous Israeli journalist who came on and who was the guest of the host. And David said to him, welcome to the show. Just curious, tell me, I know you just came back and have just been in Israel, and I just want to know, tell me one thing that is, significant about life in Israel. One thing, if you could tell our studio audience, an audience that is around the world watching this televised broadcast. And he said, the one thing I could tell you what's special and unique about Israel and Yerushalayim and Jerusalem in particular is that Friday night, and tonight it was a Friday night, the Friday night is a holiday in Israel. It's the Sabbath, it's the Shabbat, it's the Shabbos. And what's fascinating, it's serene, it's peaceful, it's joyous. And even though there's so many in Israel, unfortunately, who don't observe the Sabbath, so when they see each other, they wish each other a Shabbat Shalom. And so that's what's very special. It's something so tranquil. It's something so beautiful. They all celebrate this holiday, and this being Friday night, so it's something that I think about now. And almost as if on cue, Dave turns to his guest, and his guest turns to him, and he looks at his host, at David Letterman. He says, Dave, I want to wish you a Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, Dave. And this Dave Brenner is sitting in his chair, and he's waiting for this divine sign, and he hears across, on his television, across, the broadcast, he hears Shabbat Shalom, Dave. And here, he realizes that Shabbat Shalom, Dave, it's not just talking to David Letterman, it's talking to him. It's talking to him, Dave Brenner. And that was like the divine inspiration that he needed. That minute, he realized that the beauty of Shabbos, the sanctity of Shabbos, the spirit of Shabbos, the beauty of our religion, the passion and fervor of our faith, it's something that he had to explore. And right after that experience, he went back to Jerusalem. He spent a number of years studying in the yeshiva, and the rest is history, as we like to say. He was truly inspired and lives and lived a beautiful religious life. I can't underestimate or overemphasize the extraordinary, magnanimous significance of what Shabbos is. And I think it's taking for all of us an even greater and more meaningful, purposeful appreciation now. We find ourselves now going into what's going to be our fourth Shabbos in a row with this unusual and unprecedented situation for which we find ourselves. But I think it's worthy of just spending a few minutes to appreciate the gift of Shabbos, the beauty of Shabbos, how the Shabbos, it calls us. Shabbat Shalom, Dave. Shabbat Shalom to you. Shabbat Shalom, good Shabbos to me. It calls us. It cajoles us. It awakens us. Helps us to appreciate the stoppage. Help us to appreciate the value of family and what the Shabbos is for us as we can take advantage of it now in a way that perhaps we haven't done previously. The pasuk tells us in Chumash, V'shamru v'nei Yisrael es haShabbos, la asos es haShabbos l'dorosam b'ris olam. It's the nusach for which we say, of course, Shabbos day during Kiddush. It's to make Shabbos the eternal covenant for their generations. So many of the Mefarshim, many of the commentaries have taken note that the Torah's choice of the word Vishamru, it describes the people's observance. The Ibn Ezra, for example, suggests that there's an implication of a certain comprehensive obligation, which includes thinking about the Shabbos throughout the entire week and making sure all of the necessary preparations are taken care of before Shabbos. But there's the comment of the Chizkuni, which adopts the same basic approach as Ibn Ezra, but in his writings and in his presentation, he adds one word. He says, V'shamru v'yitzapu kol yimei hashvua, that it's more than just observing the Shabbos and thinking about the do's and the don'ts. What's the word v'yitzapu? So the translation of the word v'yitzapu is to anticipate the Shabbos. And he writes that one is to anticipate the Shabbos all week. And that's something that I know that for myself, I can't tell you how much I am appreciating and anticipating and yearning for and desirous of the Shabbos. And I think that the Chizkuni is making a very important point, that it's not just enough to observe the Shabbos, but it's also about our attitude, how we must anticipate the Shabbos and be excited about it and look forward to it throughout the duration of the week. The notion that we should anticipate the Shabbos adds a very important dimension to our religious outlook in general, but specific to Shabbos, as it highlights that Shabbos is not a burden, but it's an incredible gift, which, like other gifts, we should look forward to. We know that there's something coming, so we're anxious and we're excited about it. So aside from the impact that such a mindset has on our own personal observance of the mitzvah, it no doubt has also a very strong and impactful influence on the way our children also view the Shabbos, because that's, what we do and how we experience things and how we show excitement is certainly translated over to our children in a very powerful way. And that's why perhaps the immediate continuation of the pasuk focuses on what? L'dorosam bris olam. It should be an eternal covenant, that Shabbos will be for generations. So in light of this explanation, perhaps what this message is, that if we truly look forward to the arrival of the Shabbos, so we'll inevitably impact deeply and influence our children so that the observance of Shabbos is maintained l'dorosam throughout the generations. And as I said, I've never personally appreciated or anticipated the Shabbos as much as I do now. The stopping of the incessant and constant news feed and the constant communication. It's the ability for us to stop and to focus on the ruchnius, on the spirituality, on the davening and the slow speed for which we don't have to engage the davening the way we perhaps had been doing so previously. We're able to sit at our Shabbos meals and to sing Zmiros and say Divrei Torah and to spend time with our families. And even if we're alone, even if we're by ourselves, we're able to read things and perhaps just experience just the concept of being and just being able to appreciate the stoppage. I can't imagine that there are people that are in this world that just the 24-hour, 7-day-a-week hamster reel of nonstop action and how much that influence and impacts somebody to be able to appreciate that stoppage. So we should really appreciate the stoppage and know how much the gift of Shabbos and a Shabbat Shalom is meant to enter into our hearts, and for us to take advantage of this 24-hour period to really tap into the beauty of Shabbos and the Kedusha of Shabbos. And in so doing, I know that it will enrich us and it will continue to inspire us. It will continue to give us the strength to have the spiritual nourishment that we all desperately need during this time, now more than ever. So I hope that you'll appreciate the Shabbos as I do, and as I know I will continue to do so. And Emir Hashem, in the Chus of Shabbos, Ki Yishmer Shabbos, the Shabbos is Kel Yishmereni. As we observe the Shabbos observes and is living and is inspired through us. And in so doing, we will be inspired all our days. And Mirz Hashem, we should have salvation and goodness and simcha and Shabbos. From me to you, from my family to yours, I wish you a Shabbat Shalom, a good Shabbos. I look forward to being in touch. I look forward to seeing you, please God. Yeshuas Hashem, Keheravayin.